special morning edition of Manufacturing Hub. Very excited to have Markus on. We'll get to him and his background in just a minute. If you guys are new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new here or this is the first time you're catching us because we're at a slightly different time than we normally are on Wednesdays, we love to have a very active chat. So if you guys have questions or comments, please feel free to go throw them in the chat. And we will do our very best to go ahead and address those live during the show. If we don't get to them live during the show, we'll do our very best to address them after the show. And please feel free to go ahead and have conversations in and amongst yourselves during this. A couple of other quick things. Again, we want to thank Corner Automation for sponsoring factory automation. We want to thank Corner Automation for sponsoring the Factory Hardware Reinvented theme. I'm very excited to see where we're going to conclude this with Markus, but it's been a great series of conversations. If you guys have not caught David Nichols, David Nichols was episode 127, Bill Rainier and Chuck Ridgway were episode 128, and Davide Pascucci was episode 129 just last week. Please feel free to go ahead and check those out, either live on YouTube to go ahead and watch the videos back, or go ahead and check them out in podcast form when they come out. Those are all really awesome. And then the last bit of housekeeping for everyone is if you have not seen, Vlad and I will be live tomorrow afternoon. We're doing a live build with some of the Siemens folks, talking about their industrial edge and their industrial information hub, leveraging that as how we go build the technology stack of the future. So we're really excited about that. Vlad and I are going to get together in person in order to go do that. And so if you haven't already gone to hit the button to subscribe to that, please feel free to go ahead and do so. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome officially everyone to Manufacturing Hub. This is episode 130. We've got Markus Rimmele from Digitalium on. Markus, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, and greetings from San Diego.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Markus. Really appreciate the time. Before we dive into maybe the hardware/technical topics and the things that you're working on, could you give us a little bit of a background? How did you get into industrial automation, and ultimately walk us through where you are today?
Yes, I'm happy to give you guys an overview of where I'm coming from and where I'm going to. I'm originally born in Germany and in the south. Went into the industry in a traditional way in Germany with an apprenticeship to a mechatronic, and then got my first job actually at a machine builder for textile machines, wiring up complex machinery. And at one day, the boss asked me, or told me actually, hey, we sold this machine to Malaysia. By the way, you are setting it up there. And that, for some coincidence, brought me into field service and explored the world to me, 30 countries, 4 continents, and now 15 years in the USA. After this time in building machines and servicing them, I did a further education, electrical engineering. Went then into the programming, industrial automation, PLC, mainly Siemens for a bigger machine builder in the automotive, medical device, and photovoltaics field. And through them, I had the opportunity 15 years ago to move from the German headquarters to the US subsidiary. Was then a year in California on a project, production ramp up. Then almost 3 years in Albuquerque, New Mexico, another big plant, production ramp up, life cycle management, retrofits, build up the maintenance team. And I live now for 12 years in the Atlanta, Georgia area, which I call now home. From there, I further developed into field service and field service management. So I led field service departments with up to 50 field service technicians, and was responsible to get the right guy at the right location with the right skill set. Did my MBA in parallel at Georgia State University. And in my last W2 role, I led the field service for North America for another German machine builder. Unfortunately, with COVID and the impact to the business in live services went down the hill, and we separated, and that was the founding stone for Digitalitum, where I now focus on bringing digitalization tools to the industry and bring my industrial and engineering expertise into it. And that's where we are now. And currently, as I said, I'm in San Diego, California, at a client and helping them to implement a couple of the tools I have sold into their manufacturing process.
Just to dig a little bit deeper, maybe into that last point. So you guys obviously like bring solutions from other providers. What is your role like exactly? You help manufacturers integrate? Do you help like educate the manufacturers on what's possible? Do you help them, like establish a relationship to that OEM? Like what is kind of like, do you consider yourself maybe a consultant, an integrator? What would be that description?
Yes, so we have partnerships with 10 different suppliers or technology partners, as we know. They provide tools of different virtual reality, augmented reality, IoT, and additive manufacturing tools. On one side, as they are all foreign, mostly from Europe and Germany, we help them with the market entry into the US market. And on the other side, we consult manufacturers, machine builders, and system integrators of finding the right tool to solve their problems. Then we are also part of the implementation on site and the partner throughout the life cycle of that product.
The other question, if I may, Marcus, on that side is how did maybe the idea of where you are today came to be? Was that a very like explicit business model that you were trying to pursue, or were you trying to offer like integration services? How did you like come up essentially with Digitalium and the offerings that you guys provide today?
So in the more or less last 5 years, I jumped on this digitalization bandwagon by learning more what's actually into it and understanding it. And I still see it as a solution for a lot of problems and dilemmas we have in the industry, in machine building and manufacturing, industrial automation, and all of that. And it was always my focus to in this digitalization journey to get higher and get better. And that was more or less the driver for me when I started my own company to focus on that topic. First, I focused purely on consulting services, production automation, Lean Six Sigma, all of that stuff. And then, as it is now, always with coincidence, I found these partners, they found me, and started with one, and now we're with 10, and I call it now the digitalization toolbox. And hopefully soon we're able to make this toolbox even bigger. And on top of that, the vision is to grow the company from a one-person show into a big corporation, as the potential is out there. The need is in the market. I still see a lot of companies and corporations kind of falling behind on the digitalization journey, and specifically with the low-hanging fruits, tools, I think you can get the biggest achievement of growing in that digitalization journey.
Awesome. Let me throw like maybe one last question at you before I let Dave jump in. So I'm curious, where is maybe the disconnect like from the manufacturers when you talk to your end customers from, like finding out and maybe implementing some of these solutions on their own, right? Because I think that everyone is sort of doing research, everyone's going to trade shows and understands there's like different things, but Is it the fact that they lack somebody to lead that change? Is it the fact that they don't have the people to implement? Is it because they simply cannot find the right technologies that fit for them? Like, what are maybe the conversations you're having with them, and where do those roadblocks lie for them?
And all of the above.
Okay.
So it's a lot of different reasons. There is the hinderness to change, kind of this mentality. We are always doing it since the last 20 years, and that's how it somehow works. It's also the missing education of understanding what's actually out there. People are often not even aware what different tools are available in the year 2023 and what is all possible. When I do a demo of certain products, there a lot of people are kind of blown away and say, "Oh wow, I wasn't aware that this is actually there and that this is actually possible." And a lot of companies still don't put much focus and therefore budget and personal in these topics, while others actually put focus and budget on it. And I also see that they're in their digitalization journey way ahead. And I see kind of a two-glass situation. People who really focus on it and are far behind and have already a lot of stuff implemented and offer all the services and have solved a lot of problems and dilemmas. And I see the other class in kind of falling behind in my point of view, but they don't see that they fall behind because they're sitting in their own little bubble and somehow their system works and they are not willing to change or cannot change or not aware that they need to change.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Dave?
No, Marcus, I think it's really interesting. And I appreciated kind of how your journey, how much of your journey, including all the different educations, continue back some of those field service opportunities from starting in field service and being sent to Malaysia to running field service for a German company. Do you have any kind of interesting things that you learned, right? So obviously with Digitalium, you are not doing field service, right? Like you might do some of it, but the goal is much higher. So are there any interesting lessons learned that you had from all of those years in field service?
There are many lessons learned. I think that actually field service is one of the best profession you can get into it, specifically if you're young. Mm-hmm. Why? Because you get a lot of compact experience in a short time. You get thrown into the deep cold water a lot of times where you need to learn to swim. On top of that, if you do international field service, it just opens your horizon when you travel to foreign countries. You explore other languages, other cultures. You have to deal with this local people in all the different hierarchies, from the worker, the maintenance, the plant manager, the higher ups, and that is so much learning and also builds yourself as a personality. So I don't want to miss that experience from more than 10 years traveling around the world.
Absolutely. No, I think that's interesting. And can you kind of, I know you were talking about how when you go and you work with companies on the digital side with your toolkit, how there are some companies who are, in year 2040, and there are some companies in year 1980. Can you give us maybe a little bit more overview before we start talking about a couple of particular tools as to what you're seeing with most companies that you consult and work with, please?
I think I talked already about that I see kind of this two-glass situation, and going deeper into this, I kind of see that the big corporations, the S&P 500s, for example, the big manufacturers with thousands of people and millions of revenue, they have also, a lot of them have the budgets and the people in place and have a digitalization strategy already and working on that and are somewhere in their journey. While the small and medium manufacturers, in my point of view, a lot of them at least, don't have the budget, don't have the specific people focusing on these topics, which then let them kind of fall behind on their journey because everybody is just busy hustling in doing their day-by-day job. And let's say a digitalization project is put on the lead engineer as a little side project, but he's working already 100 hours a week, and there's just not much time to get this little side project further. That's unfortunately an issue in the industry, what I see a lot. The other one is then there is, for example, this lead engineer who is smart, who wants to develop something on its own, while it might be easier to buy a product or a solution from the market and implement that and have a better ROE and have that achievement of getting something out or a value out of it.
Absolutely. No, I think that's interesting. Can we dive into maybe a couple of the tools that you're using? And if you've got a couple of examples of how you're seeing them being implemented, I think that would be very interesting, please.
Yeah, as I said, we have a whole toolkit or a toolbox of different tools. And I actually think came up with the word digital tools. Let me explain you how I get into this. As traditionally, when we're in maintenance engineering, we have our toolbox, and in our toolbox are pliers, screwdrivers, wrenches, and some other tools categories. And in each category, we have a bunch of individual things, like you have a lot of different screwdrivers. One screwdriver enough, or one screwdriver is not enough. You need different sizes and you need different shapes, like a flathead and Phillips and maybe some others for that specific task. And the challenge is always for your specific task, you have to use the right tool, and only with the right tool you get the value of getting this job done. I bring the example up of a special screw. Let's imagine we have a flathead screw and we have a Phillips screwdriver, and we want to use that to either open or close that screw. Does it work? No, it doesn't.
You can use a flathead for a Phillips every now and then, but that's about it.
It may work the other way around. If you have a Phillips screw and a flathead screwdriver, and the flathead is in the size so that it fits into the Phillips, then you might have a chance. And the point again is you need the right tool to do your job. And in the digitalization field, it's kind of the same. In the year 2023, there are so many different applications out there. And again, every application or every digital tool there serves a specific value and a specific need and gives a specific value, like your tools. And so the challenge again is using the right tool to do that thing what you want to do and get the most out of it. And this understanding, selecting the right tool, that's where I see the challenge, as people are overwhelmed. They don't really know what's going on, or they have this belief that this magic Leatherman multi-tool, which can do all and everything, will be the solution. But we both know that, let's take this example of a Leatherman, is not the best tool in every case. You may use your Leatherman if you're out in the woods on a hiking tour and you don't have anything else. You also don't want to carry your big toolbox with you in this case. Then it might be good. But if you, let's say, work in your shop you better work with the tools out of your toolbox and not with your multi-tool. And that's again the same in the digital world as well. And so the value what we bring in, we have a understanding of, on the other side, what tools are on the market. We understand the problems, and so we bring that together to consult to bring the right tool for the right application for the best value, and then be also part of that implementation, as that's an important thing as well. If you buy this new shiny tool, nobody knows how to use it. People may not want to use it because they heard, oh, with this digital things, it may take my job away, and we better don't use that. Then this thing sits around, collects dust, costs a lot of money, and the frustration is there. And actually, a lot of digital implementations fail because of many of these reasons.
And that's a very important, like point I'd like to dig into a little bit deeper, Marcus. So again, I guess you have to curate on one side the right tools, right? So you talk to the companies that have developed a certain tool, and again, maybe they're not the right fit for, let's call it, the US market or the North American market. So you have to have some kind of a process to evaluate their solution, right? And then you have to evaluate also manufacturers, right? So at the end of the day, the tool that might be good for a Fortune 500 is not going to be good for, let's say, a mid-sized manufacturer. So I'm curious, like what kind of processes maybe, or what kind of maybe like just industry feel that you have for kind of evaluating like both sides, or what does that even look like? What are some of the conversations that you would have, with a tool manufacturer about bringing them into like your offerings, and ultimately what kind of conversations then would you have with manufacturers to figure out, do they have the people, do they have, as you said, do they have the intentions to actually roll this out, and ultimately will they succeed? Because again, I think nobody wants to fail with the wrong approach or tool.
Yeah, that's actually a very big question, and I kind of need to break it down. How do I select the tools for my toolkit? More or less, I look out what's on the market, or people approach me. I have to have them all in the same kind of target group. So the kind of user group needs to be in a defined area, which for me is small, medium business, manufacturing, machine building, and industry-wise, automotive, medical device. Why? Because I worked in both of these industries and have a lot of experience and connections. Plus, Southeast USA is kind of dense with this industry, so there's a lot of stuff nearby. Going the other side to the client side, I always evaluate in where they are and what is the problem they want to solve, and then finding the right tool for that. And if that all matches, it may get into a sales and then into an implementation. And if this doesn't match, then we have to find somebody else. It's that easy.
Interesting. And so you work with them throughout the process of, I guess, like figuring out if there's a match, but you also are there for the implementation and sort of like coaching. I guess, like, what does that maybe, let me like rephrase that. Like, what is the process of, let's call it, like, do they trial the tool first on, let's say, like a subset of their, let's say, factory, or maybe like one factory out of, let's say, 10? Do they try and roll this out kind of like across all the factories? Like, maybe what is the implementation of some of these tools look like when, there is an agreement, hey, this seems like a good idea, let's try and figure out a way to solve this?
Yeah, so during the sales process, we already talk about how we can do an implementation, and the implementation is always a custom, but it also is a step-by-step approach. So you start slow, small, get something to work, and then roll it out further. For example, you set it up in one machine or one production line first. let it run there, let people get familiar with it, and then add it into other lines. And then from there, if the company has more subsidiaries, into other subsidiaries planned, and then maybe even roll it out worldwide, always depending. So it's a custom process defined by how the situation is on a client side. And again, with the experience in the industry we have, we're able to come up with a custom plan and make that a success.
And just to maybe like take a step
Let
back.
me,
Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think Vlad and I, well, we're probably not going down the same train of thought, but Markus, I guess kind of as we're talking about these tools, are you typically replacing hardware? Are you typically replacing training materials? Are you typically filling in a gap? Where do these tools in the toolkit generally fit when you work with clients?
Again, it depends of what this tool is. As with the 10 different tools we have in the portfolio, it's a wide portfolio of different things and different technologies, as we touch additive manufacturing, IoT, data matrix code reading and verifying, augmented reality and virtual reality from a technology point. And then we break it down in specific tools. Maybe we should just jump into a quick overview or throw a few examples out. One tool we have, for example, is a tool for manufacturing shop floor planning. So let's say you want to build a new factory, or you want to reorganize the shop floor of an existing factory. The traditional way of doing it is either you use cardboard boxes and you set up that setup and then play around with it with cycle time and ergonomics and actually measure it with your stopwatch. That's kind of the very old approach. Nowadays, you use your CAD tool, 2D or even 3D, SolidWorks, AutoCAD, and you plan it there. The issue there is you watch it actually in 2D again on your screen. You may run a couple of meetings, then you hammer it in stone, and then you figure it out when it's really out there, that it doesn't look really the way how it was really planned, and your operators complaining that some stuff is unergonomical. You didn't foresee that there's short and tall people which have other reaches and all of that. And that's where this virtual reality tool comes in, where you'll be able to plan your shop floor in virtual reality. So you have your goggles on, you move things around, you can import CAD models and move them the way how you want it in your perfect layout. And then in a performance mode, you're actually able to work in there and, for example, manufacture your product. And as an outcome, you're getting cycle time information and performance and ergonomic information. And with this information, you can optimize everything. You even have the opportunity to bring, for example, your workers in and let them do actually the process and capture their feedback as well, and get, for example, the short and the tall person to kind of get the perfect thing out of it. And what is the outcome of it? You planned it perfectly. All the issues are solved. And when you then hammer it in stone, it just works, fits, and runs. And you deliver on time, which is always an important aspect as well.
And I'm assuming you can do it quicker, right, Markus? Like it's not going to take you like...
There's also a time saving involved in my point of view as well. And that's now an example of using the technology virtual reality, which you can do a lot of different things. You can play games in it. You can do training, or you can plan a shop floor with that specific tool.
And it's really interesting as an example, right? And I've not personally been through that kind of an exercise, but it definitely makes perfect sense. And I think I've mentioned this in the conversation we had off stream, but I guess you see it in the movie The Founder when they're trying to optimize, the perfect layout for a fast food restaurant using chalk on, like essentially they were on a basketball
Mhm.
court, I believe, and they were doing all the movements, how the people would move as,
Yeah,
that kind of like chain was being orchestrated. But it makes perfect sense to use something like virtual and augmented reality in this case to facilitate that and make it a lot simpler. So that's really
yeah,
cool.
that's the example how technology can help to make a planning process better, faster, and with a better outcome. And it also helps to visualize things in a better way. And that's what it's all about. The world is getting more and more complex, and we need to use the right tools to make it a little less complex. And another example with augmented reality is, for example, in field service or maintenance, we have often the issue, using US example, you get into a factory in front of a machine, and now you're looking up, you need a wiring diagram and a manual to solve a specific issue. Let's say we're in a big plant, and traditionally you have to walk a mile into the maintenance room, and there's this big wall of paper binders with all the manuals for the whole factory. I'm pretty sure you're nodding your head that you have seen this.
Usually they're like, disordered. They're not always there. They're, like a few revisions
that
behind.
that comes on top. So first of all, you're searching for a while to find the right binder, and then in the 1,000 pages of your binder, you have to find that right page of that wiring diagram. And if you're very lucky, your coworker actually ripped out that page and didn't put it back. Then some companies tell me, oh, we are already digitalized. We have everything on our network or shared drive. The way how it looks then is you have a convoluted folder structure of hundreds of folders and subfolders. And in the folders, perfectly organized, you have then file names like 123abc.pdf. And you have to use the Windows Explorer search function to search something, and you get a digital result. Either you get 1 million hit of a list of your search term, so that means you don't find anything, or you find nothing. So again, my point, you don't get the information what you need. Therefore, the risk is high that you do something wrong, and you may cause unplanned downtime with that. That's where now technology comes in place in form, for example, of augmented reality. Let's imagine you come to your machine, you scan a code with the device you have in your pocket anyway, which is this magic smartphone. With this, you augment the 3D model of that machine on top of it, and you actually see the bill of material, and it identifies where that part is in the machine, and then the technical document is linked to that, which means as a quintessence, you get the information you need at the location where you are. Therefore, you can do your job based on the real information, and the chance that you're doing your job good is, or that you succeed is pretty high.
What does it take to implement something like that, right? Because again, I think I've struggled through that problem many times, and I think that it would still have to be to some extent like a rehaul of. So you would run some kind of an application, I'm assuming, on the local server. You would need to organize everything, inside of there. You would need to tag your machines with like QR codes, and maybe have some kind of a server that obviously services those URLs. Like, what does an implementation look like for that?
Yeah, so you need to have all the documents in an electronic form, and you need CAD files, best 3D files of that equipment. There's no alternative to do actually a 3D scan of that equipment and using that. the answer on how complex that is to implement always depends of how detailed you want to have the data, and on how many repeating things you have. Let's say if you have a factory where everything is individual, it takes of course longer as if you have kind of like a serial product and that piece of machinery is used in 10 or 20 different applications. Then the whole copying and duplicating effect comes in, which then of course helps in lowering the amount of time more or less to put all the data in. So again, it depends. It is, for example, also a solution from a machine builder point of view. And if they have a machine which they sell, let's say 100 times a year, they only need to develop that model one time, and then they can sell it 100 times. And that's where the big win is, or could be, or value be.
And it's an interesting.
But I agree.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you that yes, the implementation and specifically the customization can be a big task and a big hurdle, which always needs to be evaluated at the beginning in the purchasing process if it makes sense or not.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, and it's an interesting, I think, not necessarily like a stepping stone, but I guess like you can extend that further, right? Like I think a good example of that when we were at Automate, I don't know if you saw the Vention booth, but what I found like really cool is you could then call, like, let's say you're on the phone and you're looking at that machine, you're looking at the diagrams, and let's say you can't figure it out for whatever reason, you can then call in an engineer from that company, and while you have, let's say, the machine augmented, they can also help you with support, and you can probably tie in, the metrics of that machine into that same application. So I think there's a lot of like potential beyond just even, like the diagram. So I think it's certainly going to
the visual support, that's what you talk about. That's another tool we have in our portfolio, which is another great help, where you can help a person in the field of sharing specific information from an expert which is somewhere other geographically. And again, this magic tool, which nowadays everybody has in their pocket, and it doesn't matter if it's a corporate phone or a personal phone, it just works. And why wasting all the time and just watching social media and adding some actually digital tools to it to make it more valuable? And I see a lot of power actually in this device in maintenance and field service. On one side, falls all under the topic of a connected worker. The one is getting the information you need at the location you are to do your job. That's one part of that connected worker thing. And the other one is use this device to capture data of where you are and bring it back into the system. For example, when you do a preventive maintenance task, let's say replacing a filter or so, making a picture of the old filter dirty, the new filter clean, date and time and location. And with this information, when that particular filter was replaced. When you do it next time, you actually can compare the pictures to then, for example, optimize the duration of your maintenance.
Yep.
Do I have to do it every 2 months, or is it maybe every 4 or 6 months enough too? And you only can do that with the data. And again, this device can help to capture that. Of course, always in combination with a specific tool or system where this data then comes all together and get evaluated.
Makes sense. Dave, thoughts?
Absolutely. So I will say that Markus has a really good comment from the comments talking about how virtual pre-organization of shop floor processes will save a lot of time and money for companies, benefit increasing with more complex the process will be. And so I thought that that was a really good comment. I wanted to make sure that we could get Marcus's comment on what Markus was saying. So thank you both Marcuses for that. Really excited to continue this, but first we want to thank the folks over at Horner Automation Group for sponsoring this theme.
Horner Automation is a division of Horner Electric. Horner Electric can trace its roots back to 1949 when George and Mary Horner started their small family-run business, which is now a large, thriving family-run business. Horner Automation has been in operation for over 35 years and is headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. Horner designs, builds, and markets a wide array of industrial all-in-one controllers, consisting of programmable control, HMI, I/O, and networking, along with software and peripherals. Many of our automation products are manufactured and assembled in the USA. At Horner, we support our partners, distributors, and customers by providing quarterly factory training on our products and software, as well as an extensive YouTube presence of videos that include software and hardware tips, training, industry solutions, trade show clips, new product releases, and much more. Horner strives to provide value-added solutions for our customers. We have availability, an option for every budget, and incredible support and resources to help your project run smoothly. Everywhere you look, Horner Automation controllers are there.
Awesome. And thank you for the folks at Horner Automation for sponsoring this theme. Markus, I want to take the conversation a bit in a different direction. I know that you say that kind of as part of this digital toolkit you are working with at least one company doing additive manufacturing and maybe some of it not within the factory floor. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yes, definitely. So additive manufacturing is getting, I see, a big push in the industry. As in general, it can produce complex parts faster and a lot of times also in a better price. And with the technology advancements, we don't have only plastic parts in 3D printed. There are now a lot of different manufacturing methods for metal parts, sinter, and all the different categories. So it is nowadays, or can be, an alternative to a CNC manufactured part. The challenge we see on the market, specifically on the manufacturing side, talking in terms of spare parts, for example, is that if you want to say, okay, I print my own parts, which sounds, first of all, easy. You need a whole, let's say, a printer park of different 3D printers, like a whole workshop. And the issue is then the same as when you say, I want to build my CNC workshop up with lasers and all the other tools. The efficiency comes in when you run your shop more or less 24/7. If you just have the machine sitting there and you're doing a part per day, plus you have to have specialized people operating it, you need all the tools and the material and everything. Price-wise, it doesn't make any sense. So you better outsource it and go to a CNC shop, for example. And here is where technology comes nowadays in place. You can do nowadays manufacturing as a service, where you send your drawing off into a platform, and then specific machine shops take that job, do it for you. It's all individually quoted and stuff like that. And for the additive manufacturing, we're working with a platform called Replique. They have 3D printing capability in the entire globe, in every continent, and in a lot of different countries. And for international businesses, that can be interesting, as, let's say, there's a German headquarter and an American plant. Traditionally, the part is manufactured in the headquarter and then sent over, and that always takes a lot of time. You have custom and all of this delays. why not take the electronic file in a secure way through the cloud and print it near the location where you need it, and then only go the short way. And that is manufacturing as a service in the cloud, what we offer to our clients.
So there's a marketplace?
Unique concept. Yeah, it's kind of like a marketplace. And then these guys help also with consulting services, helping. Let's say you have a CNC manufactured part and you want that 3D printed. You cannot just take that drawing and print it. You may need to remodel it or make some modifications to this, and they help with that as well.
Interesting. So they partner with different machine shops. I guess they that makes
they have a network of third-party 3D printing shops in different 3D printing capabilities. And the unique thing of them is that they do that all through a secure cloud, because when you share this complex or this data, there's always the possibility that, for example, somebody would steal that information and then print their part, but they run it all through a secure cloud. And actually that third party doesn't even see the data. They go in a secure way into the printer, and even if you would listen into it, you couldn't do anything with the data.
That's
and
very
so
interesting.
that's the whole intellectual property security part, which plays a big role in all these digital solutions as well.
That's really interesting. That's it sounds like an Uber offering for 3D printing, right? So it would be like Vlad has a machine shop in his garage and he's capable of doing, just this narrow segment, obviously, of parts, and the request comes in and, I get to say, like, let's say if it's whatever dollar amount that I'm willing to accept, I'll take it. It will take me, I don't know, 7 days to produce, and that's very interesting.
There are of course other platforms on the market as well, where it works exactly like you said. If you're flat the machine shop, you can work with that platform. The platform knows about your specific capability of, for example, what machines you have and what size of parts you can manufacture. Mm-hmm. And then if they see jobs in that area, they give it to you at a specific price, and you work them up. And the client communication is all done through the platform. So if there are any quality issues or stuff like that, the platform handles that. And I see that more and more coming, because on the other hand, it makes also life easier from a consumer standpoint. As I see, we kind of got the Amazonization in the industry world as well. We as consumers, if we need something, we go to Amazon. We have a huge portfolio of gazillions of different articles, and we just find it, order it, and we have it the next day. Mm-hmm. And the same expectation comes more and more from industrial clients as well. They don't want to go through a convoluted ordering processes which take forever to get stuff. They want to have it through an online shop as well, which brings me to another example. We are offering now also a platform for machine builders to run their service business on. And one part of that is a customized spare part shop on a machine base. So the client gets a specific login, and from there they see the spare parts fitting to their equipment, and they just order it through a shop. And then, of course, all related technical documents are linked to that as well. And the big win is to make this ordering process faster and more efficient. As when you deal with smaller machine builders, the ordering process looks like this. Send an email to info@machinecompany.com. Yes, I need
Mm-hmm.
that part. Okay, what part do you need? I need this. Send me a picture. Okay, we need to identify. Oh, it can be this part. 2 days later, you may get a quote, and then you have to start the whole ordering process, and 10 emails go forward and backward, and a week goes into the land until an order is placed, versus going to an online shop, identify the right part. First of all, only see the part which you really need, which fit to your specific machine. You see price, you see availability, you put it in the cart, put your credit card into it, and you get it.
And it's really interesting, right? Because I think those who have not been maybe in a maintenance department don't see it as a big problem. But once you experience it, and you know that you have to store a lot of spares, even when the lead time is, let's say, 3 to 6 months, versus if you
Yeah.
can go through a platform and it's 2 weeks. There's a lot of sort of like cost games that play into that as well, and it is a real issue, because then you're stressed about getting that drive motor, or like whatever the mechanical component may be, from a manufacturer that, like I said, has a very long lead time. So it solves an
Yeah.
actual problem. And like I said, it's hard to convey to someone who has not lived through like maybe that maintenance experience, but the problem is
And
definitely there.
with the whole supply chain issue situation, lead times for certain parts actually skyrocketing. Even in the industrial automation part, as I see your background picture, certain I/O components or CPUs have lead times of a year and longer nowadays, and that's really worrisome if you need to wait a year for a specific part and you cannot really replace it with something else. And if this is, let's say, an electronic part, you even cannot 3D print it. So you're kind of stuck in that situation.
No, definitely, it solves a real problem. Dave, what are your thoughts?
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting to see what the future of all of this will move to. Marcus, I know that we started the conversation by talking about your background and talking about kind of the haves and haves not with these digital tools. What is your projections for the next 3 to 5 years? Are we going to see many of those have not, the people who are well behind, catch up? Or what is going to happen to the market in general with these digital tools?
So first of all, there will be further development in more tools, specifically in the AI area. That area is exploding. Again, the technology is now available, and with this comes a lot of different use cases and applications. And there will be many, many more going into very specific niche applications. On the implementation side, or on the company side, I see kind of two things. I see the people adapt to it and go with the digitalization journey, and they will succeed. But I will also say that companies who do not put much effort into it may become the next Kodak or Nokia. It is unfortunately like that.
Interesting.
I was going to follow up with the question, like maybe from the solutions provider side, right? And maybe not necessarily a pessimistic view, but I think that a lot of startups have really good ideas, but ultimately fail to scale to a point where their business model makes sense, right? And I think that the question then becomes, for a manufacturer that's adopting some of these new tools, will these companies grow to a size that is sustainable and ultimately be there, let's call it, in 10 to 20 years? And I want to say, like, how do we as an industry ensure and sort of support the startup ecosystem to get to that size? You know what I mean? Like, how do we,
Yes.
like, don't let these companies almost not necessarily die, but I think like have the right structure in place that allows them to find a sustainable solution?
That is a very good question, and is unfortunately also a bit of the uncertainty. On the other hand, we have this uncertainty in the industry since forever. As if you just look 50 years back, or 50, 60 years back, after Second World War, when finally automation, at least basic automation, came in, a lot of companies started becoming machine builders, and a lot of them started as a one-man shop in a garage shop, and then grew over time, and now they're either mid-size or large companies. And back then there was also the question, do I trust this guy? Will he succeed, and will he or she be here in 10 years? So the questions are the same. How it works specifically with the startups and in the digital space, we need to figure out, but it's definitely a risk out there. And in the evaluation of a partner, of a supplier, that plays a role in where they are they financially stable, and what will happen. And it's the same questions asked now or in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's again, like I don't think that I would have an answer to that question. You know, I think it's just a matter of figuring out, like I guess on the end user side, what kind of a relationship you want, right? Because there's going to be advantages to sort of like more mature companies, OEMs, or solution providers, and there's going to be some other advantages to working with a smaller company again, and there's going to be different risks. But I think it's an interesting like landscape for sure, because there's a lot of innovation, but I think there's also a lot of kind of uncertainty of where all of it is going.
But in this landscape, there are also the big players, and there are a bunch of small players, and it's the decision of the customer of with who they feel more comfortable in order to get into a partnership or a relationship for that digitalization journey. As both versions, small companies versus big companies, have both their pros and cons.
Mm-hmm. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely, and I was going to say I'd like to add to that the fact that there are so many of these smaller startups with these different digitalization tools. I think it's inevitable that we see at least some number of them fail over the course of the next, 3 to 5 years, and that will cause some issues with larger companies as they look to go move into which tools do we want. But I think if you've got a very compelling story, if you've got a very compelling use case, there are certainly opportunities that will allow these digitalization tools to succeed from smaller companies. But I think it'll be a very interesting next 3 to 5 years as we see who shakes out.
Yeah. But again, with the technology and the internet and what we all have, smaller companies also have the opportunity to grow and get out into the market, and it's not only a playing field for the big guys. As at least in the past, everything under the umbrella of digitalization was big, large, complex, expensive, so therefore only the big guys could afford it. Mm-hmm. Now I see prices coming down with this whole portfolio and variety out there, so that it is also attractive for the small and medium companies to finally get on the digitalization bandwagon and do something and start implementing different tools, and then later on systems to start their journey of getting better. That's what it's all about. Getting better and be able to provide more value to your customers. That's more or less what all, in a summary, this digital things bring.
Awesome. I love that. I think that this is amazing. Markus, I want to ask you one of my most favorite questions to kind of really put you on the spot as to we're going to ask you to predict the future. And I know you've been giving us a bunch of very interesting future predictions, but as to if it's a digital toolkit or the adoption, where do you see these being used more in the next 3 to 5 years?
Good question. In general, I see everything, as I said, further developing as the needs of the market will change, or the needs will get stronger. I predict that, for example, in the future, you cannot just sell as a machine builder a piece of machinery anymore. You have to sell a piece of machinery and life cycle management or service spare parts platform with it. Otherwise, it will not be bought, or it's even specified in specifications that this is part of the delivery. Why? Because we have general industry trends, and one of them is the whole labor shortage, specifically in the technical area, maintenance, engineering, and stuff like that. Machines and systems are getting more complex, but the level of the people doesn't go the same scale, and that gap needs to be filled. And the only solution, what I see again, are different tools under the umbrella of digitalization, which can help and fill that gap to work more efficient with limited resources. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. No, I like that very much. I want to follow that up with the question that we normally ask for some career advice. And instead of just asking for some general career advice, if people are interested in the types of tools that we spent this episode talking about, how can they learn more? How can they better prepare themselves for what the future of the workforce is going to be?
My advice in terms of learning is a multi-pass. First of all, through social media and specific LinkedIn. Follow, for example, Manufacturing Hub podcast and others to kind of get refreshed with new ideas and new content in that area. There's on YouTube and other learning platforms, bunch of courses out there. Udemy is, for example, a great learning platform where you can learn specific things about IoT, augmented reality, cloud, everything under the umbrella of cloud. Then, for example, the cloud providers like AWS or Azure offer specific courses, even for free, through their learning management platform. That's another great way. You can participate in industry organizations as a volunteer. That's always a great way as well. I do that, for example, with the Reliability Leadership Foundation and their Digitalization Consortium, where I'm connected with industry practitioners and experts in that specific area. And we write books about this topic and then talk about it in webinars and conferences. That's another great way to learn and also to network. For network, again, LinkedIn is a great choice. Network with your peers in the industry and exchange, because at the end of the day, we have all the same issues and problems. Let's talk about that and come up with solutions.
Absolutely. I think that is fantastic advice. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Markus. I think
always keep learning. Never stop learning. There's always something new, and get into the habit of learning, reading, and stuff like that.
No, fantastic. And on the note of reading, we're going to go ask you for some book recommendations, and I think you've been involved in writing a couple of interesting books. Would you be willing to share those with us, please?
Of course. So these are the two books I participate. The first one is the Purple Passport. Both were done with the Digitalization Consortium of the Reliability Leadership Foundation. And this book is let me find the right page. Give me a second. So there's a framework of that organization, the uptime elements for reliability and maintenance, where they kind of structured it like the periodical concept for the different chemical elements with the groups and then the elements. So they came kind of up with that concept. Okay. They talk there about reliability engineering for maintenance, asset condition management, work execution management, leadership for reliability, and asset management. And this framework is already out, and there are thousands of companies which already using that. The missing part here was everything under the umbrella of digitalization, and that's how we added that framework to it. More or less talks about the source, where the information is coming from, connect the methods of exchange, the collection of the data, edge, cloud, on-premise, the analyze part, getting the insights, and then very important, the do, take action from the insights and do something with it. For example, make things more efficient. And then underneath the base elements, data governance, which is very important, the oversight of your organizational data, trustworthiness, which is security strategy to protect the organizational data. Everything under the umbrella of cybersecurity falls into that. And then, of course, the digital twin, where everything comes together.
What's the title, Marcus? Sorry, I want to make sure we capture the full title.
The title is the Uptime Elements Passport. That's a series, and that talks about IoT and digitalization. That's more or less a framework book, very generic. And then the second book we wrote is the implementation guide. In here, we talk about the implementation of a digitalization strategy into an organization and everything what can go wrong with that. For example, missing leadership support and stuff like that.
Awesome. No, that is fantastic. Thank you for that, Marcus. I am certainly interested in going to take more of a look into those books. It's not often we get a couple of really pertinent recommendations. It's not often we get a couple of very pertinent recommendations from the author for the first time we've gotten it. So thank you for that, and thank you for being part of that. And then the last question for you today, Marcus, is who should reach out? Who do you want to connect with? Are you looking to go have kind of conversations with other people in the industry? Are you looking for customers? How can our audience help you?
I'm open for everything. So best way to find me is on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty sure you guys link my profile into the chat. Connect with me, chat with me there, and then from there we can connect into a meeting. I'm interested in the exchange with peers, just talk general things. And of course, I'm also happy to provide more information about the digital toolbox, what we offer at DigitalituM, and how this toolbox can help you of solving problems and dilemmas.
That is awesome. Thank you, Marcus, and thank you everyone for hanging out with Vlad and I today on episode 130 of Manufacturing Hub. If you have made it this far, make sure to follow Marcus and Digitalium, Manufacturing Hub, Vlad and myself. If you guys haven't made it that far, If you're watching on YouTube or on LinkedIn, please feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us out. Thank you to Horner Automation Group for sponsoring this entire theme. It's been a lot of fun so far, and I'm excited about the work that we will continue to do into the future. If you guys have made it this far on podcast, please rate us 5 stars and follow along and do all of that like and subscribe stuff. I found that when I ask, you guys like and share, and we continue to have more listeners, which is super helpful. Feel free to tune in tomorrow for the next show, and every Wednesday, most Wednesdays at 4 o'clock. Until then, we'll see everyone soon.